Hello everyone, Violet here, and today I thought it would be really fun to talk about theories about divination and how it works and why it works. It definitely works. We know this from experience, or I certainly do. But I want to tell you some ideas and some things that I've thought about as well, so that you could explain it to like the biggest skeptic. And if we have any big skeptics here watching this video, I'd love to hear what you think about it. To, of course, the most like spiritually minded person who probably already would be like having an affinity to the idea of divination. So firstly, I want to talk about the most logical, scientific, taking spirituality out of the equation, an explanation that you could give to someone that I think is pretty solid about how divination works. And what I would say is that the associations, when you pull certain cards, especially when you come to a reading with a question, let's say there's something on your mind, there's a problem, and you pull a certain amount of cards and they have different pictures or they have different associations or different words on them, you're then taken out of your situation in a way. Your mind takes itself off of that and focuses on something new. It focuses on the cards and the meanings and the pictures. And you know when you're too close to something and you can't really see it? This is kind of a way of sort of stepping aside, looking at something fresh and new, and then when you make your own associations with those cards and think, okay, how does this apply to my situation? And regardless, you could pull the most random spread. It could be just entirely random. If you're looking at those cards and you're thinking, how does this apply to me? You are like looking at things from a different angle. You're having to problem solve. You're having to look at your situation from different sort of points of view and maybe make realizations that you wouldn't have had before. So that's a very simple reason why this works. And then of course, if you're looking at things, you know, beyond just like card associations, but other ways like scrying, other, you know, even like looking at the clouds, seeing what pictures come up with when you're looking at clouds. This is a very practiced form of psychology, like for a very long time, of like looking at ink blots and saying, what do I think of when I see this? And that means something because you're tapping into your mind, you're tapping into your subconscious. So that is one reason. And another idea that I particularly really like is the idea that nature hates a vacuum. So if there's a vacuum, if there's an empty space that's truly empty, it wants so much to pull things into that space and to fill that gap. And you see this in nature everywhere. So with divination, if you think about it this way, and this might be a little bit more of a quantum way of looking at it, but if you have a question and you like attune yourself, let's say you're attuning yourself to the cosmos and you're kind of piercing into that space and you're opening up essentially a vacuum with your question. Just simply with a question mark, you're opening up a vacuum. The universe wants to fill that with an answer. So this is why if you have a question and you like earnestly pose that question and you open it up, you might find the answer in your daily life the next day. You might see it with like signs coming in, not just in a divination practice, although you can use your daily life like that, like divination, but it no matter what, in this perspective, nature, the cosmos, the universe has to fill that vacuum with something. So I really, really like that concept. Another very commonly talked about reason why divination works, especially if you're looking at things like pulling cards, pulling runes, things like that, is the law of attraction idea that, you know, if you are coming in with a situation and your situation carries a certain energy, you are going to be most likely to, when putting the intention there with that specific situation, draw the cards that mirror back to you that situation. So they have the same energy, They are attracted to each other because they're alike in that way. They have the like energy. And this is also a reason why a lot of people will charge their rune stones or charge their tools of divination, like really focus in and embed that energy of the meaning of that object into it so that you're likely to pull it. It has that same pull, it has that same meaning, which I kind of see on a universal level as well. That if everyone, if our collective is looking at a certain tarot card and having an association and a meaning with it, then that fabric is also embedded within that card of like everyone's intentions with this card and associations with this card. And I also like to think of the idea that the universe speaks to you in your own symbols. So that is an example of how that can work. Then of course, if we're working our way up to the most spiritual explanation, or perhaps you could think of this as like the least scientific explanation, would be, depending on how you view science, of course, but would be that spiritual forces are actually guiding you to choosing the right cards, or is actually moving your pendulum, or like creating a force that changes your physical reality and brings you the answers in that way. So that is a really interesting way to look at it. And the other side of that coin, which I find really fascinating, is actually that your subconscious is doing that. Your subconscious is moving the pendulum ever so slightly. Your logical mind isn't choosing the direction, but your subconscious is like coming forth with those subtle movements, those subtle choices that you might not even consciously realize you're making. And if you go that deep, I think this is kind of interesting. If you go that deep into the subconscious, you're also kind of connecting to that universal energy, which could also be the spirit that you see as like moving those objects, you know, like in a way they could be one in the same. And as you look towards your subconscious, this kind of circles back to our very first explanation in this video. The one thing I'd love to talk about now are reversals. So this is something I've put a whole lot of thought into, but when you pull a tarot card in reverse, a lot of people are afraid of this because it feels negative, and you might hear that like, oh, these are always like the negative versions of the cards, and people also, train just went by, people also will use that as a reason not to pay attention to reversals and say, hey, there are already plenty of negative cards in the tarot deck. I don't look at it like that, because the tarot cards are not black and white. They're not just positive and negative. I think that every card has a shadow side and a light side to it. Every card in the deck has a purpose. And then also, if you are out of balance, anything, the most positive card could end up being negative given the context of the situation. So I take that out of it, and I'm not afraid of using reversals at all, but I find them very interesting because another way of looking at reversals is that they're the direct opposite of the meaning of the card. And I actually don't think that that's the case. I think that there are ways that that works, and I'll talk about that in a second. But just like we were talking about, if you prescribe with this sort of like law of attraction idea that your energy is going to meet the energy of the card with the closest meaning to you. There's also this theory or this idea, this concept, which it feels very true to me, that the universe doesn't really hear things in the negative. I'll explain. Like if you were to say, no, I do not want this experience. No, I don't want it. And you're saying no, you're also putting your focus on that experience. So the noun, not the no, like the focus of your mind, of your intention, like what it is that you're looking at, that is the energy that you're putting out, not necessarily the idea that you're pushing it away. In some ways, and this can be kind of a toxic concept if you spiral into it too much, but I do think there is a truth to this, that if you're focusing on something negative, you're actually kind of more likely to bring it to you, especially if you're doing so with emotion behind it, like fear. So when you pull a card and it has it has the energy of that card and it has a meaning, but it's coming up reverse. I don't see that. I don't think the universe would then speak back to you using a negative, like saying, no, that is not, or like, no, let's say that it was the 10 of Cups and it's in reverse. And you might see the 10 of Cups as being like a happily ever after. And the universe says, no, this will not be a happily ever after. I don't think that's a sentence that the universe would say. So I would see this in different ways. I would see the reversal as being something perhaps being pulled away or draining away, or sort of like on its way out, it's leaving. So the energy of that is there, but it's leaving. That could be one way to look at it. It could also be the shadow side to something. It could also be this thing is unconscious. You're not aware of it. It's beneath the surface. So it's in reverse. Those are some ways that you could look at something. So it still carries the energy of the card. It's not saying an outright no. But it still could be like aligning with the meaning if you were to pull that card in reverse and think of it as a no off the bat. So if we go back to our 10 of Cups example, it would be like you pull the 10 of Cups card and it's in reverse. Depending on the context of the reading and depending on your own intuition, it could be meaning, are you suppressing the idea that you can have a happily ever after? Do you feel you don't deserve this? Is this something you've pushed away? Or is this something that has been sabotaged? Is this something that like there was this hope for a happily ever after and now it's crumbling apart? Or it could be you are the shadow aspect of happily ever after, like you are trying so hard to sort of delude yourself into thinking this is a happily ever after, but in actuality, like it's because you want that so bad. You're putting yourself in situations that might actually be harmful for you, and in the end actually maybe not finding your happily ever after because you're focusing on other things and trying to form them and make them into that. That could be like an example of a shadow aspect of that card. So yeah, let me know what you all think. How do you work with reversals? And the bigger question, how do you think divination works? And did any of those theories at the beginning of this video make sense to you? I'd love to hear in the comments. And thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.